Welcome to Hockey Night in New York, where Islanders hockey always reigns supreme. Whether you were raised at the barn in Uniondale or born in the stable at Belmont, Hockey Night in New York is your home for all things Isles. Now, let's drop the puck and get this party started.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is Hockey Night in New York. Welcome to the program, everyone. It is Sunday, October 5th, 2025. Coming to you live from the great Floored Media in Rockville Center. A huge show coming up for you tonight. We are back. We are talking New York Islanders, and there's a familiar face sitting next to me right here, Mr. Arthur Staple. Joining me, I'm Sean Cuthbert. Arthur, welcome to the show. Welcome to the program. Happy to have you here. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Pretty exciting to be here. Been on your show a lot of times over the years.
Yes,
over
indeed.
Zoom, but this is a different feeling. Good vibes. I love it. I love being here. I'm ready to start this season.
Yes, sir. Great to have you. So let's just start bringing you back into the Islander world here. We didn't hear from you for a little while. A lot of things happened over the summer. Matthew Darche takes over as general manager, makes a lot of moves. They get the number one pick. Matt Schaefer comes in. A lot of draft picks. Pick up Jonathan Drouin. Shabanov, comes over from the KHL. What do you make of the summer that was for the New York Islanders before we start to move into more recent history?
I mean, it's the biggest offseason they've had since Lou Lamoriello came in to replace Garth Snow back almost 10 years ago. They're billing it as a new era.
Yes.
Islanders are, without any disrespect to Lou, because he did do a great job for a lot of the years that he was there, especially those first years. Getting Barry Trotz coming off a Stanley Cup was a huge coup. Barry was instrumental in turning that team right around after John Tavares left. 2 trips to the conference finals. But it was time to move on.
Right.
And they made a bold move to let Lou go. An interesting search for sure.
Yes.
Some twists and turns. But I think they landed on a guy in Matthew Darche that they really wanted, a guy who's an up-and-comer, young, embracing what they want to do as an organization now, build their brand, be a little bit more out there, kind of catch back up in the social media world and the marketing
right.
world that they've had with catching up to some other teams. So, and then obviously winning the draft lottery. What an amazing time. That was huge surprise. And now you've got Matthew Schaefer, who, even you leave aside what he's done so far in training camp, some of the things he's done on the ice, off the ice, this seems like a fantastic young man. Barely
Absolutely.
18 years old. I got a chance to talk to him at the draft combine in Buffalo back in June, and just incredibly poised, incredibly mature, the kind of kid that you want to build around a franchise around. So some things that they did deliberate to move forward, good fortune to be able to move forward with Matthew Schaefer and some of the other moves that they made that you mentioned. And really, I think just kind of opening things up, maybe a breath of fresh air for some guys who've been here a long time.
No doubt about it. And before we really dive into the meat of this, I also want to thank our wonderful sponsors, starting with Knock Hockey. Totally stoked to have these guys with us. I don't know about you, Arthur, but I grew up playing those games with family and friends back in the day. I'm so stoked just to have them on board. Just brought back a lot of memories. I just want to welcome them to the program here. Fantastic. The all-time hockey classic made in the USA. Get yours at knockhockey.com. And also a big thanks to Razor and Kniff and Lonstein, attorneys at law, ready to fight for you. Check them out at razorandkniff.com. That is RAISERANDKENNIFF.com for a free consultation. Of course, we are happy to be here at Floored Media in Rockville Center. So with those pleasantries out of the way, let's fast forward a little bit. You got Schaefer on board. He looks great. You have basically training camp. You get to see these new guys that come in here. And, I don't know how much you got to focus on and how much you got to watch. But, I mean, did you gauge anything from these new guys that have come in, Drouin, how they've looked so far, in this very unpredictable preseason that they played in? Yeah.
I think Schaefer's obviously been the focus.
Yes.
I think coming in, you talk to people around the league, where the Islanders are, maybe not a huge contender, kind of where they've been over the last couple of years, kind of on that cut line. I think maybe that's where a lot of people are projecting them. So you say to yourself, are they even going to keep Matthew Schaefer? Should he go back to the OHL? Are they going to keep him beyond 9 games? And when you watch him play, you see a kid who looks incredibly, he fits right in there. He's going to make mistakes. Obviously, he's 18 years old. but the way he's able to recover with his foot speed, just talking to a couple of the guys that have been there a long time last week, Scott Mayfield, who's been his D partner and looks like he will be his D partner.
Right.
He said it's like having Nick Leddy there if Nick Leddy were 6'2" and almost 200 pounds.
Okay.
Where like a big defenseman who can move at fast, and Mayfield, said to me, like, I collected the puck a couple times, looked up, just going D to D, and he's already halfway up the ice.
Right.
I'm like, I got to get used to this.
Sure.
So it's he's a really dynamic player, and I think one that's going to have to grow into a certain role here. Even if they start him out as a third pair defenseman, he seems like he's going to be able to handle whether it's special teams. He just seems like he could add a lot to his repertoire as he goes along. So he's obviously been the focus. I think some of the other guys, Jonathan Drouin, a little bit. He was sick. He missed a little bit of the earlier in camp. He's a good complementary player. I think he'll be a guy that hopefully will facilitate some power play success, which they desperately need.
Just a bit.
He's starting out playing, I think, with Bo Horvat. It'll be an interesting combination. Maybe it'll turn Horvat into more of a scoring first kind of guy, which, I think he's been at times, but maybe even a little bit more shoot first mentality. A guy for me who I think has popped really well, and I think has popped for Patrick Waugh, is Emil Heineman.
Okay.
Who was kind of, a little bit of forgotten guy when they got rid of Noah Dobson. Obviously a huge move. The 2 first-round picks were the main part of that. Mm-hmm. But Darsh said he really wanted Heineman included in this deal. He's a young guy, still 22, 23 years old. More of a bottom 6 guy in Montreal. Maybe he's not a top 6 guy, even though he's been playing some of that, but he plays with a really high motor, and he's got a great shot. I think some people kind of likened him to Cal Clutterbuck. I don't know if he's going to be that physical, nasty sort of style of player.
Yeah.
But he's got good wheels. He's obviously going to be a good penalty killer if he fits in that kind of role, and he can shoot. And, I think the motor part, Islanders have been maybe not a high motor team the last couple of years.
Not exactly.
The way that Lou Lamoriello wanted them to play.
Right.
So I think he's going to be a guy who's going to be fun to watch and see where he slots in going forward these next couple of years.
So to bring the focus back to Schaefer for a second here, I rewind back to the last show we actually did in the program back in July, and I remember talking about is this guy even going to make the team, right? Because you look at all the prospects that were kind of coming, it just didn't seem like anybody was billed to make the team out of camp in their first year with this draft, for whatever reason, right? And he's a defenseman. They take longer to marinate, right? But it just seems like by all accounts, the Islanders have clearly made up their mind. I don't think there's even a question that he's going back.
Yeah, I agree. It does seem like whatever he's done, whatever Patrick Waugh has said, it all seems geared towards, at the very least, he's going to be here for a little while this year. And I don't really see, I think we maybe think about Noah Dobson, the last defenseman for them that was a high draft pick that they were debating. Remember they had that Barry Trotz and Lou had this plan for him. He was going to play occasionally.
Play with Zdeno Chara and
they kind of threw that to the side because there were some injuries.
Right.
But they were going to try to bring him along slowly without having to send him back to junior because he had won back-to-back Memorial Cups. Really nothing left to do at that level. And I think the debate now in the NHL is it worthwhile for a guy like Schaefer who's got the speed. He's a dynamic player. He's going to be playing 30 minutes a night in Erie if he goes back there. Maybe 20. Maybe playing too much, be a bit of a target. He's the number 1 overall pick. Somebody wants to make a name for himself. So I'm sure that the ideal situation for them is if he could play a little bit in Bridgeport and go back and forth.
Right.
But that's not possible. So. I think the ideal path for him this year is he plays, maybe they're in contention, maybe they're not. He goes to play World Juniors for a few weeks in December and January, kind of a little break, represent his country. He'll have the Olympic break, which will also be a good break for him. You don't want him playing 82 games when he's never done it before.
Right.
And really, if they're not contending, then it becomes maybe we try some things with him. Maybe we try him as a power play guy. Maybe we try some situations that we wouldn't normally try him in because we're not going to be a contender. We're going to be selling off at the deadline. Obviously we don't want that to be happening. But if it does, they leave themselves with some options for him. And I think he seems to be able to handle whatever's going to be thrown at him on the ice, off the ice so well that it's not going to be a season where he gets knocked back a little bit development-wise if he stays and doesn't play at a high level or doesn't succeed at a high level. So I feel like they've lucked out because he's who he is, and I think he can handle whatever's going to come.
So you're not concerned he's being rushed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, he's super young. I don't think there should be a lot of expectations on him. I think if he ends up, there are nights when he plays 12 minutes, if they skip him in a rotation because he's having a rough night, shouldn't reflect at all on him.
Sure.
I think he'll be able to handle it. It'll be interesting to see. You know, I think we've seen so little of this, of 18-year-olds being in the Islanders lineup in the last 20 years or so. It's really, you know, you think about Josh Bailey, you think about John Tavares, and
right.
you know, the Bailey debate was, did he get set back by staying up? Maybe he did a little bit.
Right.
Tavares obviously was ready to go from day one.
I just don't think he did enough push-ups with the chains, to be honest with you.
Well, we're gonna be seeing Bales a lot this year when he's doing his little cast with Kyle Clutterbuck.
Yes.
One of those things that we talked about that the Islanders are doing to kind of
right.
bring guys back into the fold, have a little bit more fun with some of their broadcasts and some of the game nights. So it'll be interesting to see how Josh, what his perspective is talking about Schaefer, because he kind of went through that.
Right.
It was 16 years ago.
For sure. So let's keep it on the youth for a second. Cal Ritchie seemed to open some eyes during preseason. Again, preseason's a crapshoot. You know, somebody can put up 6 goals in the preseason and then go quiet for the regular season, right? But he did impress. I watched a couple of games, and he did look pretty good out there. He was making some clever plays, and Patrick Waugh even came out and praised him. It looks like he was making his decisions a little harder. Where do you think he falls, you know, with this lineup going forward?
You know, he's going to be part of it. And I think, you know, again, good legacy that Lou leaves when he made that deal for trading Brock Nelson away, make sure that he included Cal Ritchie.
Right.
You know, I think to me, he looks like a guy who can be very easily within a year or two a replacement for J.G. Pageau as the third line center.
Okay.
Maybe he's got second line center ceiling. Not so sure about that, but he's a smart player, positionally very sound, got some skill. So I think he fits in well with what the Islanders do. This is not a star-laden team where he might get lost a little bit. He can, you know, middle six center on the Islanders is a very important position for the way that they're structured.
When was the last time we could say the Islanders were a star-laden team, Arthur? when did that happen?
Oh, gosh.
Was I alive?
Maybe. I was probably in elementary school, so way back when. But, you know, I think he's going to be good. He's the sort of prospect that they need right now. Where the cupboard went from pretty bare. Mm-hmm. They trade for Ritchie. They win the lottery. They make the Dobson trade. Now you've got Keishon Aitchison, Victor Eklund, two guys that are a few years away but going to be good. You've got Danny Nelson, who's popped in college.
Yep.
You've got Cole Iserman, who's popping in college. Suddenly, this is a top 10 prospect pool around the league, and I think a lot of the prospect experts really acknowledge that it's gone from nothing to something really quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
So Cal Ritchie, to me, he's not going to be an elite goal scorer. He's not going to be a number one defenseman, a number one center, but he's going to fit into what they do. And I think when you have that base, when a guy who's in free agency or a guy gets traded here and looks at what they have coming in the next 2 or 3 years, you're going to have people in the league that are going to want to be a part of it. And that, I think, is super important, and Cal Ritchie is going to be super important to that.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the general vibe around the team right now, the fan base, right? Is kind of this optimism that this is something new, that it is changing over. Now, maybe we're not going to see the results overnight. It'd be nice if we did. But,
yes.
I mean, it definitely feels fresh, right? It definitely feels like Matthew Darch has this team moving in another direction with some help from Lou and what he left behind.
Sure.
But you have this youth coming in through the prospect system now. You even infusing some guys into the lineup. Another guy I want to talk about soon is Shabanov. But we don't know what's going to happen yet. We don't know how successful they're going to be. But I think that's part of the excitement, right? Like now maybe you already kind of have them figured for where they're going to end up in the standings, sure. But I think just that like the unknown with what they've brought in is it kind of has re-energized the fan base a little bit. And I can speak for myself at least and say like I'm very just curious to see where things go. My expectations aren't through the roof, but I'm just like, let's see where all this goes, right? Like it's almost like fun to be an Islander fan again if you were getting a little, kind of dragged down by, same thing every year, right? With the Lou era, right? So now let's go to Shabanov here. Kind of a wild card. Flashy videos coming from the KHL. Lots of skill. Everybody's talked about his height. He's a small guy. I remember rewinding a year ago when Siplikov came over and you saw the highlight reels for him and the goal goals, and he looked good in camp and stuff. And then it was like, oh, maybe this guy can be a 40, 50-point guy. Was it 30-point guy, right? Are we looking at the same thing here, right, where he shows a little flash? He had that nice deflection goal in one of the preseason games. What do you expect from him? Where do you ultimately see him ending up with this team? I know he slotted again with Pajot, as you mentioned before, but where do you think this guy ends up and how he can contribute for the team?
I don't know if you can base it. Him and Siplikov are obviously different players. But
yeah, for sure.
Siplikov, to me, coming in was like, this guy's a pure goal scorer. He went from being like a middling KHL guy to suddenly a 30-goal guy over there, bulked up a little bit, was going to be a guy who was going to be a net front, that sort of like, not Anders Lee, but in that mold, power forward. And he comes in, and he's got super soft hands.
Right.
He's maybe takes a few too many penalties, especially in the third period.
Yeah.
But he's a really deft passer. He's a smart player, and you're like, wow, I didn't see any of that on the tape.
Yeah.
And nobody really talked about it, but here it is. And now, this year he's playing mostly fourth line in training camp, and seems like that's where he's going to start. And it's not totally out of position. So maybe Shabanov has some skills that he wasn't able to showcase in the KHL, where scoring is at such a premium that if you become a scorer, that's kind of like, oh, a guy's got 50 points in 60 games. That's high level over there. They don't score a whole lot on the big ice.
Yes.
So maybe in the smaller ice, he's got some other things that he can showcase. I don't know that third line is where ideally he would contribute the best. I know that there was talk that maybe he would be on that top line with Drouin and Horvat.
Yeah.
Maybe taking a little bit more time to acclimate to what the NHL speed is, and certainly once the games actually count, you're going to have to get acclimated. So maybe that's the thinking for Darsh and Patrick Waugh, that he starts in the bottom six, kind of accentuates some of the defensive style of things, gives that line a little bit more offensive pop with him and Holmstrom on the other side. Maybe that's the thinking there, but you would hope that at some point he would graduate up to that top six. Maybe he'd be a guy who could fit with Barzal. Maybe he'd be a guy who could fit with Horvat. We'll have to see. But I think the resume that he's bringing says more. He'll be more effective as a power play top six guy.
Yeah, for sure. And you wonder, how many darts Patrick Waugh is going to throw at the wall. How long is it going to take him to shuffle the deck and, mix and match and see who goes where. Sure. That'll be interesting for sure. And you mentioned Drouin. Obviously, Darch mentioned himself. He was brought in for his power play prowess. Hopefully he helps the team out there. But, he's a guy who wasn't even on my radar. Not that really anybody was this summer. But I was like, oh, Jonathan Drouin, Islander. Okay, fair enough. Didn't see that coming. But, let's look at that for a second. What do you think he can add? Because he's coming from Colorado, and you say, oh, yeah, he did well in the power play, he put up points, but then you look at the names he was obviously playing with, and it's like, okay, well, a little bit different, McKinnon, Horvat, that whole thing, how he slots in here, what do you think he's going to bring to the table?
I think he's got to do what he's done, and I think it wasn't just there. I think he had some good years in Tampa that he was part of. Again, a very you play with
Stamkos. Some names there too. Yeah, star-laden roster,
usually pretty good too. That'll pad your stats.
Right.
So I think he's going to have to do a little bit more here to facilitate some things, because their power play has been so stagnant for so long. I'm eager to see the first Fire Ray Bennett tweets come out if they go 0 for 6. And I had to sit and think for a second, who is the assistant they brought in that's running the power play?
Right.
It's his power play coach from Colorado.
Right.
So hopefully there's some system stuff that he's familiar with that might also help on the ice, kind of translating what a coach wants.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see how that's going to go. It really has been a huge failing for them, and I think the interesting part to me is watching how they've configured when they've had most of their regular lineup in preseason. Tony DeAngelo's been kind of the quarterback on that top unit. You've seen some Schaefer on the second unit. You've seen some Boquist when he's playing. But they don't have Noah Dobson anymore, and really their best power play in the last few years was when he was running it, his 70-point season a couple of years ago. So I don't know that Jonathan Drouin having a guy who's on the wing of a 1-3-1 is the guy that's going to be like, open it all up and suddenly everything's going to be great.
Right.
They've become so stale and so telegraphed with the things that they've been doing the last couple of years that anybody new that comes in, I think, can help. And he certainly has some experience, and hopefully will jolt some things into place for some of the guys that have been here too long, that have been mired down in 10 to 12 to 13% power play effectiveness, that maybe they can get out. If they're a 17 to 20% team, a playoff team, whenever, the last few years, they were a more effective team. It's been amazing how consistently bad it's been. So hopefully it's got to get better.
Amazing indeed. And to stick on that, and this is a debate that's come up on this program previously too, is the whole staff versus personnel, right? As far as like the coaches versus the players and who has a hand in how successful these things are, right? So like, you joke about the fire assistant coach, whether it's Gomez or Huda or whomever it is, right? And now you bring in some fresh faces here. You got Bugner in there. You got Bennett here for the power play. Like, I mean, to you, like, how much difference does it make, who's behind the bench versus who's on the ice? Because for me, it's got to be the guys on the ice, right? Ultimately, right? You'd like to think there's enough talent out there, even if Bo Horvat isn't Nathan McKinnon, or even if Matt Barzal isn't Patrick Kane, whatever, right? But you'd like to think at the end of the day, these guys are capable of putting pucks in the net every now and then.
Yes, and I definitely feel like hockey is a different animal than baseball or football, which I think develops a lot of sports fans' knowledge about what assistant coaches or coordinators do and how separate things are. You fire a defensive coordinator in the NFL, it's because he's the one that's actually calling the plays.
Right.
Hockey, the head coach does everything.
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Waugh is the one that's running the power play. Patrick Waugh is running the penalty kill.
Mm-hmm.
He has assistants to kind of, they facilitate the bench.
Yeah.
They come up with ideas, whether it's 6-on-5 or 5-on-4. But it all falls on the head coach, especially in this day and age when many head coaches have done those assistant jobs before or have had experience in those in different roles. Patrick Waugh came from juniors where your staff is basically one other coach, who Benoit DeRosier, who he has with him now.
Right.
So he knows what he's doing. And it really the buck stops with him. I mean, I guess you could dismiss some assistant coaches during the year, but boy, it almost never happens in hockey.
Right.
So
right.
I think that should give everybody an idea that if you're mad about the power play or the penalty kill, Patrick Waugh's your man. So
there's your scapegoat, ladies and gentlemen.
It sounds great to know who the assistant coaches is that are the guys that are drawing on the whiteboard when they have a timeout before a power play. But ultimately, the buck stops with the head coach in hockey. So, it's a group effort. I'm sure Ray Bennett, he's been in the league a long, long time.
Yeah.
He's really well regarded. So I'm hoping that he's got some good ideas for this power play. But if he doesn't, I don't know that the tweets should keep coming. I love to read them, but it's not going to all fall on him.
Well, at the very least, if they do find some success, those fans that were tweeting it, you can feel validated.
That's right.
Right, for calling for the firings of all those previous assistant coaches,
Sure.
right? I guess we'll see how that plays out. But let's look at the depth of this team a little bit. Let's just kind of look at the overall roster a little bit. Let's start with the forwards. Anders Lee got a little dinged up during training camp. He should be back relatively soon. But when you look at the lineup up and down, we touched on Horvat playing with Drouin and Heineman. Barzal looks like he's going to be lining up with Palmieri and Lee when Lee's healthy. When you look up and down that lineup, obviously, you're not too terrified as defense, right? As far as like star power, as far as points coming the other way. This is another Islander squad that's going to have to be win by committee, right? Where they're going to be grouping the points together as opposed to having a few guys at the top just running away with it, right? So let's start there with the forwards. What do you make of that makeup?
I like it. I think this is a pretty deep forward group. I think you're looking at Mark Gatcomb, who had a really nice run last year, kind of forced into a role that nobody else could really grab hold of as a fourth line guy. He's been the number 13 guy pretty much throughout training camp. I think it shows that Shabanov really has to work to be effective, I think, and we don't really know what we're going to get out of him. But everybody else, these are established NHL players.
Yeah.
Simon Holmstrom still playing third line. He's a guy who could certainly move up and produce the way that he's done the last couple of years. Having a fourth line of, we're going to get into it, I'm sure, but Anthony Duclair playing with Casey Zizekas and Siplikov.
Right.
Not really where you want Anthony Duclair, but I think that also shows they're not just going to keep him on the top line if he's not playing well. They have to. There was real competition in this camp for spots, for slotting in certain roles. Maybe not a lot of competition for one of the forward spots. Right. But Mark Gatcomb, Kyle McLean have really been solidly the extras so far. And if you were, before camp started, you were making your depth chart on Puckpedia or whatever. Yeah. Those are the two guys you would have on the outside looking in, because the other guys I think are more experienced, more effective, better role players. So I think it's been good. Cal Ritchie, like we said, was kind of the wild card, but I think really having him playing minutes, the injury, you don't want to see guys get injured, but I think it was pretty well timed because they're not shuffling people around. Casey Zizekas shouldn't be on the wing.
Right.
If you wanted Matthew Barzal on the wing, there really was no one to bump up to 2C. You can't have JG Patrick there. You
100%.
can't have Richie there untested.
Right.
So I think it took the pressure off of a decision that they needed to make that maybe was going to be a little unpopular because Richie did have a good camp, but he needs to start in the AHL. He needs to be the first center called up if somebody gets hurt.
Sure.
And I think everybody's in their right place. Could all go to hell in a few days, but I like their forward depth a lot more than I've liked it the last couple of years.
Okay. All right. That's positive. So let's swing it now to the defense. You got, I guess the biggest question mark almost every year is the health of Adam Pelech and Ryan Pulock, right? We know what they bring to the table. We know what they've done in the past. But these are two guys that just, for whatever reason, whether it's luck or not, just have struggled to stay in the lineup and struggled to stay healthy. You have Romanov fresh off an extension here. Looks like he's going to be a main cog in this defense now for years to come. Looks like he's lining up with Tony DeAngelo. We know what he brings to the table. We know what he doesn't. You look at that top four, and then, as you mentioned already, Schaefer and Mayfield rounding out the top six. A little different. No Noah Dobson, who is going to step up in his absence on the offensive side of the puck. What do you make of the defense?
I'm less bullish on the defense than I was on the forwards, but I think that's a fair thing. Yeah, the Pelech-Pulock pair, for me, it's, health is obviously the most important thing, but the temptation to overuse them versus Romanov and DeAngelo, which was a pretty good pair at times last season. When they were together. I think Tony D, just want to aside say remarkable. This guy was going to walk away from hockey when he left the KHL. Yeah. Lou gave him a shot, and suddenly he was playing 27 minutes a night on a very depleted defense group. Yes. But he earned himself another contract. I think for the most part he's put a lot of the stuff from early in his career, from his youth, behind him. Mm-hmm. He's a veteran now. So good on him for earning a spot and recognizing that this is a good place for him to be, because they're, especially with Dobson gone, they need a puck mover. They need a guy who can skate. But I think the only thing that worries me about keeping Schaefer the whole year is the temptation to overuse him, because Pelech or Pulock might get hurt, and it's not even really a might. They're going to miss games. Yeah. You can't have the track record that either of them has had, where they've missed 20-plus games, I think, in 3 years in a row now.
Yeah,
just a lack of reliability.
Right.
And you really only got Isaiah George on the left side, other than the guys that are here. And I don't know, he certainly had some really good flashes last year, but I don't know if he's ready for that kind of step up in class on a nightly basis. So the temptation will be there, I'm sure, because of Schaefer's natural gifts, to give him more time, give him more opportunity. And I feel like, depending on where they are in the season, I don't know how good that's going to be for him. Just to overuse him, because you want him to be as fresh as he can be all the way through, and learn and kind of grow in a slow but steady way. So I knock on wood. I hope Pelech and Pulock and Mayfield stay healthy.
Yes,
there's not much of a chance for that happening, because we just don't have the evidence.
I wouldn't put money on it.
I know, and they're in their 30s. I wish I was still in my 30s, but that's old for hockey players, especially who had some of the injuries those guys have had. So that's an area to watch, and a super big area of concern.
Yeah, I think just with the whole Schaefer thing, that's my biggest concern. I mean, going into camp, I really thought he was going to be a 9-game guy and then back to juniors, because I just didn't see any need to rush him up. For me, it's an evaluation season. They're not winning any trophies this year. So I just didn't think you had to.
It's the first show. You're not going to get anybody to tune in. That's it.
I meant the President's Trophy.
Okay, good.
But point is, they don't have to rush him. I just feel like he wasn't needed. So but look, they're the experts. They're the guys getting paid tons of money to make those decisions, right? So, in Darsh and staff, we trust, hopefully, right? So, but yes, to that point though, if those guys go down, I guess it's going to be on them really to manage that time and see how they're going to, handle him. Because listen, I mean, he's the golden child now, right? I mean, he's that prize #1 pick. He's going to take this franchise to the promised land one day, right? I mean, that's what everybody's banking on, and everything looks great so far. And, you just get concerned. You look at track records and history of how certain players have developed and how they haven't developed, right? And so, I'm not saying I'm scared or I'm worried. Fine, he earned it. There's a reason why they want to keep him up. But if and when those circumstances come in, you just got to cross your fingers that they make the right decisions so that, they keep that golden child developing the way it's supposed to.
Yeah, it's gonna be tempting because the way that he skates, the way that he moves around the ice, if I was a coach, I would want to see more of him too.
Sure.
Especially because the other guys that they have are maybe not the most mobile, Pellick and Pollock are not even what they were 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
His D partner Mayfield is definitely lost a step, even though he was never that mobile to begin with.
Right.
So it's going to be a push pull of wanting to have him there and trying to showcase him because he's like you said, he is the golden child, and recognizing that that's not maybe the best path for developing a number one defenseman in the league.
Indeed. So let's round this chat out now with the goaltending. Ilya Sorokin, Semyon Varlamov, question mark? What's going on there? And then, of course, Rittich coming in, signed over from L.A. What do you make of this tandem that we have here for the Islanders?
I wish it was a trio. I wish Varlamov was ready to go because you'd probably want Varlamov and Sorokin rather than Rittich and Sorokin because I don't think Rittich has shown a whole lot in training camp. And, we talked before about how the games don't really matter and personnel, but goaltending to me matters.
Sure.
You want to see your goalies ready to go. Rittich he's a pro. He's been around a long time, so maybe this is just the way that he starts. I'm not that familiar with him. He played out west for most of his career.
Right.
But, when you're backing up Ilya Sorokin and backing up any high-level NHL goalie, you got to give them 25 games. It's a must. You can't have Sorokin playing that much. Right. We've seen him wear down the last couple of years.
Absolutely. We've learned that for sure.
Very apparent that he is a 50 to 54 start guy.
100%.
And that is it. You need him ready for if they make it through to April.
Right.
And Varlamov could give you that as a backup and sometimes a lot more. I don't know if Rittich can give them that. So I'm curious to see how it'll go and how Ra will manage that in the early going. I think one of his failings as a coach, even in just a year and a half behind the bench, is that maybe it has to do with being a Hall of Fame goalie who played 70 starts every year. I think he probably feels like goalies should be able to play. Number one goalies should be able to play more.
Right.
And I think he's kind of Lane Lambert did it 2 years ago and then transitioned to Ra, and then Wa did it too.
Yeah.
Until Sorokin broke down and they needed Varlamov to get in the playoffs. And last year, even in the middle of the year, when things weren't going so well, he was riding Sorokin pretty hard.
Right.
I think you have to manage that better as the season goes on.
Absolutely.
I think you have to understand Sorokin is here for the long haul.
Yes.
He's your number one. You have to know his limitations, and his limitations to me are 50 starts. So where are those other 32 going to come from?
Right.
Are you going to give Dave Rittich 32 starts?
Right.
Tough one. And Varlamov,
what happened there? Because everybody was saying he's going to be ready for camp, and then he wasn't ready for camp.
I think he's had this lower body issue for a long time. I think he's had a couple of surgeries here and there, and he's getting up there. He's 36 years old. He's a big dude.
Yes.
I think he's slimmed down a lot over the last couple of years to try to take a little bit of pressure off his joints. But, he's got a lot of wear and tear on his body as a goalie. So I'm interested to see if he can come back. If he does come back and the Islanders are not in a good position, there's certainly a lot of teams around the league that need goalies and need a guy with his resume. So I'm curious, last year of his contract, whether that would be something that they would facilitate if he's able to play. But if he doesn't even get to that point, if we're still waiting for him to come back and practice in November or December, then I don't know if we're ever going to see him again.
Well, not only that, but if he does come back at his age, as you noted, like what version of him are we going to get?
Yeah.
Where's he going to be at? I mean, he's missed a lot of time here. We don't know when he's coming back, and then it's like, is he going to be even ready to go when he does come back?
Yeah. It's a tough question, and again, much like we said with Schaefer, the temptation is going to be, in all likelihood, unless Dave Rittich shows us something that he hasn't yet, that they're going to need Sorokin to win games, and they're going to have to resist that temptation in a very big way, because if you play him 10 starts in a row, and especially with that Olympic schedule where it's very condensed through December and January,
right,
it is not going to be a recipe for success after they get back from the Olympics.
Have to agree with you there. So that's pretty much going to do it for our opening segment here, but we're introducing a new feature. Arthur, you're a music guy. I happen to be one of those people as well. We tried to figure out a way to incorporate that into the show. So here we are, Arthur's Anthem. Every week, Arthur is basically going to take the theme, the narrative of the Islanders from the week previous, or in this case, the summer or preseason previous, and maybe just drop a song that kind of ties in with what's going on in Islander country. So, to kick it off, what is the anthem this week?
Well, all possibilities are still on the table here. We have to have some optimism. We have to have some local guys, I think, to start it off. So we're going to go with Public Enemy and Anthrax, Bring the Noise. Public Enemy, maybe the greatest act ever to come out of Long Island. Chuck D, love those guys.
Right
and
on.
Anthrax, bunch of Queens guys, pretty close by too. And a great band.
It's part of the island.
So I think that's some bringing some enthusiasm, bringing the noise, bringing the excitement when we get started in the season. Hopefully it will be this optimistic once the season gets started.
We shall
We'll
see.
stay with this for now.
Love it. And I'm pretty sure, now I don't know if you're a video game guy, but I'm pretty sure that was in like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
I think
Jay, you should know this, right? 1 or 2, right? Yeah, memories. Oh my God. But yes, excellent choice. So that'll be a regular feature here. And folks, want to thank you all for tuning in to Hockey Night in New York, the debut show for the brand new season. Arthur Staples on board. We're going to break. We'll be right back.
Knock Hockey from when we were kids. It's an absolute legendary game that they stopped making a couple years ago. However, it's back, baby. You can go to knockhockey.com, that's N-O-K hockey.com, and get it for your kids or your nieces and nephews or some random neighborhood kid, because they're all going to need it, because otherwise they're going to be playing video games for the next 6 months. And if you don't have kids, get it for yourself, or better yet, your girlfriend. She'll be hurt and confused at first, but once she starts slamming that puck around, she's going to love you forever, or at least the game. Go to knockhockey.com. It's a little pricey, I'm not going to lie, but it's made with real wood by hand in Michigan. When's the last time you heard of a product being made like that? This holiday season, be an absolute legend, make everyone happy, bring the family together. Go to knockhockey.com.
Attention all artists, storytellers, and creators of all kinds. It's time to make your content stand out above the rest. And Floored Media is the place to make your visions become a reality. Maybe you want to elevate your podcast and add some video, or turn that novel you wrote into an audiobook. Or maybe you just need the right space to produce your daily vlog. Whether you're a seasoned veteran or just starting out, Floored Media has the professional facilities, exceptional staff, and intimate atmosphere to breathe life into your creative passions at every step of the process.
Hope you enjoyed the ads. Now let's get back to Hockey Night in New York.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to Hockey Night in New York. It is time for What's on Tap. That's when we look ahead at the New York Islanders schedule. And yes, folks, it's kicking off this week. It starts on Thursday in Pittsburgh. Islanders versus Pens. The games will count. Arthur, Pittsburgh Penguins, going through a little rebuild of their own right now. What do you see over there? What do you make of this game to start the season?
It's a good one for the Islanders.
Yes, 100%.
I think that will be a good confidence boost. I don't see a lot of good things happening for the Penguins this year. It might even end with Sidney Crosby getting traded before the season is out. Yeah.
Are they going to that town up there, bud?
What's that?
Montreal?
That seems to be the hot rumor.
Okay.
And if he goes, I would assume Evgeny Malkin goes. You could try to get rid of anybody. They've been trying to get rid of Erik Karlsson. It's a bit of a mess down there, out there in Pittsburgh. So
what a shame. What a shame.
Good time for the Islanders to get help, to get feeling good, fat and happy to start the season. We haven't seen the Islanders get off to like a really good start to a year in a long time. They're always kind of in that 3-2-2, whatever.
Yes. Yes.
I think this would be a good year between that game and the home opener a couple of days later to really get started on the right foot. And I think with all the new changes, being able to start 2-0, 3-0, 4-1, it goes a long way.
It does. We'll see if it happens.
Yeah.
But that would be great. Yeah, a nice little 10-0, 1-1 back when they were the 4 stat categories, in the first Laviolette year, right? He took them up to Lake Placid for training camp, and they just hit the ground running there.
That's right.
Yeah, miss those days. Anyway, so big game there. It starts the season off. And big news here, we're actually going to be hanging out watching that game. You should come hang out with us. Watch party down at the Borelli's Tap Room in Long Beach, down in the West End. Arthur and I will be there. Pre-game show, 5:30. So, feign a little sickness at work. Come down early. Come down to Long Beach. We're going to have a great time. In-game sound's going to be on during the game. We're going to have raffles, prizes, have a good time. Maybe we can get some questions in during the show from you. So definitely come on down to Borelli's Tap Room in Long Beach on Thursday for opening night against the Penguins. It'll be on all the screens. We're going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yeah, you looking forward to it?
Last 20 plus years, I'm sitting in the press box. I love sitting and watching games.
There you go.
This will be way more fun.
There you go. So come on down, pre-game show. It'll be a great time. But let's do a little season outlook now for the Islanders, right? We got that one game on tap, but then we're going to be right back in the show. So let's go to a little season outlook. We talked about the depth of the team. We talked about, where this team may or may not end up. We have a lot of wild cards on the table, some new faces. You look at this season, you looked at maybe the, not so much strength of the Metro, but perhaps the weakness of the Metro. Where could this team end up this season? What do you see?
I kind of see them through all of the changes and then the division kind of being where it is. I think they're going to be kind of right back where they've been. I know that's maybe not
right back where they started from.
I don't know if that's what fans want to hear.
Yeah.
But I think that may be the best case scenario is a 90-plus point team that's fighting for a playoff spot. I think in years past, it's a disappointment. This year, it might be an accomplishment to be able to be a 92, 93-point team, maybe even a little higher because it usually takes a little bit more than that to make the playoffs. But to me, the division kind of shakes out. Carolina's always very consistent.
Right.
I feel like Washington is going to take a step back. The euphoria of the Ovi chase and kind of that magical season they had last year. I don't think they're going to be able to duplicate that. The Rangers, to me, have to be better just because of all the drama they had last year that was unprecedented over there. Jersey, I think, is going to be really good. They're a solid team. So that's maybe the four teams you're looking at that could be above them. Columbus, I think, is right in there with the Islanders. I liked a lot of what I saw from them last year, and they're kind of building something good. Pitt and Philly, you're a Pennsylvania hockey fan. Good luck to you because those are going to be some bad teams this year. So if Columbus is not as good as we think, and Washington is maybe not as good as they've been, that's a little space for the Islanders to fit into that 3, 4, 5 spot.
Right.
It's you're in the hunt. You could make the playoffs if things go right. If things really go right and they start off really good, I think we saw that with Washington last year, where I think a lot of people thought they're not going to try to win. They're just going to try to get over the record.
Right.
And boom, their goaltending really sparkled. They got some good contributions from some young guys. And Ovechkin, when he got back from the broken leg, was just on fire. I mean, I want whatever he's got going on at my age and his age.
He's a machine.
So I think if things can kind of come together and align really well, like we were just saying, and they start off well, sky's the limit when you get a lot of confidence going early. I always used to those years of covering Islander teams where you didn't really know what you're going to get, and then they suddenly turned the corner in 2014. I remember talking to Kyle Oppozo in the locker room, and I'm just like, what changes? And he's just like, everybody in the room has been on good teams and bad teams throughout their lives since they were kids. Like when you're on a good team, it's a good team. You just have the confidence is just there. You say, we're going to win every night.
Yeah.
Even if you don't, you say like, all right, well, blip in the
win the next
blip
one
on the radar, and we'll win the next one.
Yeah.
I don't know if we've gotten that feeling from the Islanders for a few years. And if they can have it, if this new era that the fans feel really good about translates to the room, then maybe you're looking at second place or a guaranteed playoff spot, and maybe you can break through if everybody's healthy and ready to go in the playoffs. There's no one that scares you in this division. I don't think.
Absolutely not. No.
And now with Barkov out for the whole year, I don't know that there's many teams that scare you in the other division.
And that's where I was going next. You look at the teams that they might be competing against for a wild card, if that's ultimately where they end up, right? You look at the Detroits of the world, the Buffaloes of the world. How do they stack up against those teams? And do they have enough to perhaps beat them out for that 7-8 seed?
Yeah, it's always tough to predict if a division is going to have two teams or it's going to be one wild card from each division.
Right.
To me, you look at like Ottawa and Montreal. I think they've taken significant steps forward. Obviously, they both made the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
If they stay in that playoff range, and you've got Tampa, that's I think this might be the year that they tumble down a bit.
Okay.
Florida, who knows? Toronto, losing Mitch Marner. Now their goaltending situation is really Anthony Stolarz and nothing behind him.
Right.
So there's some wild cards there. I feel like Boston and Detroit and Buffalo are kind of not really going to be contenders. So, you keep an eye on what's happening in your division first off. But then you take a peek at the other division and see how things are starting to shake out, and maybe there'll be some real interesting shuffling in that division because of the Barkov injury. Florida has got to hit a wall. I mean, Bobrovsky, another guy who I want what he's got going on in the offseason. Yeah. A guy who's 38 years old and has played more games than he's playing Patrick Waugh level games.
But
now.
Not only that, like how long ago was it where we all kind of thought he was toast, right?
Yeah.
Like he signed that $10 million a year contract and everybody was like, man, what a mistake that was. And here we are now, 2 Stanley Cups later, right?
I know. He's a machine too. And I feel like Paul Maurice they and Bill Zito have built such a good program there where you can just plug guys in. I mean, I was covering the Rangers when they traded for Niko Mikkola a couple of years ago, part of the Tarasenko deal. And I'm like, this guy's good. But, and, he looked like Victor Hedman out there in the last 2 postseasons where he's the big guy getting up and down the ice, throwing hits. Like, who is this guy? He's a Florida Panther. That's the level
they got the magic sauce down there right now.
So they'll get in the playoffs and they'll be fearsome when they get there, whether they get their guys back or not, because of the program they built. And that, to me, is super impressive, that what they've done down there.
Yeah, and I think I'm pretty much, on the same level as you are as far as the Islanders go, right? I mean, I think playoff bubble team, if they stay healthy, which they didn't do last year, that had a huge effect.
Or the year.
Fair, absolutely. But, you lose Matt Barzal for 50 games, right? Like, you're going nowhere fast there, right? Like, they tried their best, but, he's a guy they can't lose. There's certain guys maybe you can kind of limp over the goal line with, right? But he's a guy you can't really do without, right? So it starts with a healthy Matt Barzal and trickles on down. And I think that, if they kind of find the formula with this new squad, maybe this new refreshed energy and enthusiasm, the new staff coming in and everything like that. And not for nothing, the last time the Islanders changed GMs, there weren't a lot of expectations on that team, and things kind of went their way. I'm not saying they're going to go the same way this time. But, you look at the squad, you comment on the depth, and it is pretty deep for this Islanders team. And if things click, if the health is there and things click, like, it wouldn't shock me if they snuck into a 3 seed in the Metro. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but it wouldn't necessarily shock me, because I think we do need to see what Mike Sullivan's going to do with those Rangers over there. I mean, they obviously on paper are much better than they were last year, but it all fell apart. Are they going to pick it back up? I mean, from my point of view, maybe my point of view is off, but I thought they were going to be a much better team than they ended up being, right? And you kind of have the new leadership there with JT Miller and Mike Sullivan. You see if they can right the ship over there, but if they can't, I feel like there may be a spot for the taking there for the Islanders where they don't even have to worry about a wild card. A lot of things have to fall into place. We'll see. But yeah, I think they're going to be right on the cusp. There's probably going to be meaningful games in March, maybe early March. But I think there's going to be meaningful games. Hopefully they go the right way, and they give us a fun long season, or longer than maybe some expected, because I think they're right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can anticipate some of the questions that we're going to get as the season goes along, and send in your questions, everybody. The fans that you don't want to just be in that mushy middle. You want to either be bad or good, because you could maybe get some futures for Anders Lee. You could maybe get something for JG Pageau. Maybe if Pelech is healthy, maybe you could even trade him before this season is out. Even just to kind of change things up a little bit. Yeah. So contending for a playoff spot means obviously they're not trading anybody. So then you kind of go through the year, and if you miss, then you're kind of stuck a little bit and you lose guys for nothing. So yes, I agree with that sentiment that you want to either be solidly in a playoff spot and ready to add, or solidly out of a playoff spot and ready to sell. If you're kind of where they've been the last couple of years, just kind of pushing hard and striving just to barely get in. Not necessarily where you want to be, but as we said, maybe that's not a bad place for this team to be, because we know that Matthew Darche has a different, fresher perspective on, new set of eyes on some older players, a little bit more willing to part with them. Certainly was willing to part with Noah Dobson when he wouldn't agree to a contract that they thought was fair. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it's not a situation where we've been in before, where they're pushing to get in and you say like, we're going to see the same thing over and over again. Even if they're in the same position standings-wise, they're not in the same place.
We're going to move on from what's on tap, and now it's time for Hero of the Week, brought to you by Knock Hockey. Get your board at knockhockey.com. Cue that heroic.
That is heroic.
Right? You feel ready? Feel brave?
Yeah.
All right, folks. It's time to talk about Hero of the Week. Arthur, What do you got for us to kick things off this season?
You mentioned it. The most important guy on the team is Matthew Barzal to me. And, you know, when the few games he played last year, I thought he looked really good. Two of the most kind of bad luck injuries you can get.
Yes.
Broken wrist.
Right.
Broken kneecap, which is very rare. You know, you want to be able to see that he's still got the elusiveness and the kind of just the way that he plays that very few other people can play like that. So you need to be able to see that that's going to be there. But if it is there,
did you see it in the preseason?
A little bit.
Okay.
I don't think he was going all out, nor should he have been.
Sure.
But you know, he's the straw that stirs the drink with this offense. Him being back at center, maybe not an ideal spot for him because he's not so great in the faceoff circle, and you know, it's kind of going back and forth. He really loved playing alongside Bo Horvat, but I want to see him kind of take charge of a line. He's with two of the most senior guys in the team who I think he certainly knows well enough what Anders Lee and Kyle Palmieri can do. I think it's time for him to kind of seize that moment and not say, well, I'm going to sacrifice my offense because Barry Trotz wants me to, which is what he did to great success for a few years.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the way that we saw him play at the end of the year 2 years ago when he was just, you know, when he and Horvat were just starting to work together, he also hurt. And then when he was healthy last year, being a guy who was hounding pucks, stealing plays, using his hockey IQ. If we see that guy, I think I'll feel a lot better about this Islanders team.
Do you think they'll have Anders Lee take draws?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know how great he is at taking draws.
Okay.
Not a lot of experience at it. So, you know, I think you're going to have to live with that line getting a lot of ozone starts, which maybe help with some offensive numbers, but I don't, you know, maybe you're going to see JG Pageau jump on for Kyle Palmieri, and if they have to start in the D zone.
Sure.
You know, Barzal is what he is as a centerman. He's been in the league, you know, 9 years now. I think we know he's never going to be a 60% face-off guy.
Right.
He's never going to be a guy who
I'll take 50.
Yeah. I mean, that would probably be pretty good for him. So I think they're going to have to try to, you know, figure some things out in terms of where they start that line and configuring some things for him, but to kind of compensate for the things that he's missing as a center. But I think they're going to, you know, conversely to that, put him in a position to succeed offensively and maybe get some numbers that you've wanted to see from Matthew Barzal since his rookie year.
Okay, fair enough. Well, my turn, folks, and I am going with Anthony Duclair. Again, preseason crapshoot. You don't really know what's happening there. However, it looked like for me the speed was back. He was moving out there, which is very encouraging. Yeah. Obviously, there was plenty to be said about the injury last year and what happened, everything with Patrick Waugh, and obviously he didn't have the year he wanted when he came back from injury. But he looked good in preseason. He had that nice little sauce pass to Heineman there for the goal, and he just looked involved in the play. He was noticeable, which I think was a problem last season. When he came back, I just feel like you didn't really know he was out there, right? And obviously, you know, Waugh had the words that he had for him last season. So he's looking for a big bounce back year. And, you know, you mentioned how he's starting on the fourth line right now. I don't think that's where he ultimately ends up over the course of time. I think that stuff will work itself out. But look, if they are going to be that team who's successful on the bubble, he's going to have to be one of those guys that's contributing there, right? Hopefully he's potting between 40, 50 points, right? Maybe hovering around 20 goals if he's firing right? So I think he looked good so far through preseason. We'll see how that translates in the regular season. But for me, he was a performer during the preseason, my hero of the week.
All right, I like it.
That'll do it for Hero of the Week, your inaugural Hero of the Week for this season, presented by Knock Hockey. Go to knockhockey.com to get your board today. And now we're going to break, and then we're going to the Snake Den.
When in need of representation, it's not always easy to know where to turn. But whether you've been accused of a crime or need to go to court, Razor, Kniff & Lonstein, attorneys at law, have you covered with over 100 years of combined experience. With offices in Manhattan, Mineola, and Suffolk, Razor, Kniff & Lonstein is an award-winning law firm specializing in criminal defense with additional expertise in business debt settlement, trust and estates, personal injury, and more. At Razor, Kniff & Lonstein, you'll have direct access to your attorney 24/7. Because more attentive service translates to better outcomes. You deserve legal representatives with national recognition and a strong track record of delivering results. And Razor, Kniff & Lonstein are ready to fight for you. Call 212-LAW 1500 or go to razorandkniff.com to schedule a free, no-risk consultation today. That's RAISERANDKENNIFF.com. Razor, Kniff, and Lonstein. We win cases because we make your problems our problems.
Welcome to the Snake Den with Jake the Snake Redonis.
That's right, folks. We are back at the Snake Den for yet another year here at Hockey Night in New York with the great Jake the Snake Redonis. Jake, great to have you back. How was your summer, buddy?
It was great. Did a lot of traveling. And
excellent.
Went to Nashville for the first time. Definitely
Nice.
recommend that. Went to Pennsylvania a few times. Just enjoyed every last minute of it.
What was your favorite part of Nashville? Putting you on the spot.
You are. I mean, I would definitely just say the live music. I'm a big
Okay.
live music fan, so you walk into any bar there and there's a band playing. And
That's true.
Honestly, they're all amazing. Also heard,
Outstanding.
I don't know if it's true or not, but some of the bands don't even get paid there.
Is that right?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
Yeah, that's not cool.
I think it's for like exposure, but
Oh,
I'm sure
I know that part of the business.
Yeah.
I'm very, very
Anyways.
familiar with that.
Yeah, very cool
yes.
vibe there. If
In
you're
a
into
past
music,
life.
definitely a place to go to.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, we're in the Snake Den now. We going around the boards? We keeping it in the system? What are we doing here?
We're keeping it in the system.
What do you
I
got
mean,
for us?
The Islanders obviously revitalized their prospect pool
Yes.
over this summer, and with Matthew Darsh coming in, and finally there's a breath of fresh air in the system that I know you guys have talked about already tonight, but I just
Right.
wanted to highlight 5 prospects to keep an eye on this year.
Okay.
And that would be starting off with number 1, Matthew Schaefer. We're going to see the most of
Heard
him
of him.
this year. He'll be up. It looks like he's here to stay. We'll see if that is true or not. But I mean, he's going to be the cornerstone of this new era of Islanders hockey, and I'm very excited to see what he could do this year. What we saw in preseason was very nice. The 2 things that stuck out the most to me was his skating ability and then his ability to jump in on transition, whether he's got a back check and catch someone. We saw him do that twice throughout the preseason.
Yes.
Very nifty. Was very impressed with him, and I'm excited to watch a number 1 overall pick play for the Islanders.
Yeah.
Second is Cal Ritchie. He's another guy that we're going to probably see at some point. Obviously, the injury might have hurt him with getting up sooner than we thought. He could have been on the opening night roster. I think he starts in Bridgeport, who they actually start their season this Saturday at home. I don't think he'll be playing in that. I think he has a 1 to 2 week timeline.
Okay.
But he's someone that I think could help the Islanders in all facets of the game. Not dominant in one of them or not, but he could play on the penalty kill, power play, offense, defense. He just kind of brings it all across the board there. Third, Cole Iserman, sophomore at BU now.
I think he put one in last night, right?
Put two. Yeah.
Excuse me.
So, I mean, he led freshmen in scoring in the NCAA last year. First game of the season, actually against LIU.
Okay.
Last night, he potted 2. So,
Awesome.
I mean, that scoring
Okay.
touch is still there. He's someone I think that the conversations with him is developing his game away from the puck. I think Jay Pandolfo is kind of known for maybe being able to help with that ability. So we'll see if he can round up maybe his defensive game this year. I think he's still maybe 2 years out. We'll see.
Okay.
Fourth, Victor Eklund. When you trade Noah Dobson, you got to turn those picks into something good. And everything that I've been seeing online is that this is a steal. And
Yeah.
he's looked good. They actually have started their season over in Sweden where he's playing. He's got 5 points in 9 games. Already all assists. He's not a guy who puts the puck in the back of the net that much, but he's very creative. And it's going to benefit him. He's playing in a higher league this year too. And he's still very young. So I'm excited to see him develop. And I think that he could be a good player for the Islanders in the future.
Sure.
His brother's very good over in San Jose. And then fifth, the other guy who came over in the Dobson trade from the draft pick, Kashawn Aitchison, who's still playing the OHL. He's over, I believe it's Barry, in the Barries. He's two-way. He added a scoring touch last year. He scored 26 goals as a defenseman last year. He actually already has 6 points in 6 games this year, 3 goals, 3 assists. Another guy, I don't know if he'll be able to do that at the NHL level, but to have another defenseman who might be able to bring some offense, and the big thing about him is that this guy hits people.
Yes.
He blows people up in open ice, which is always fun to watch as a fan, as long as
Absolutely.
nobody's getting hurt.
Sure.
But I think he's another person that's going to be fun to watch. I mean, the Islanders had 3 draft picks in the first round, so exciting stuff for the Islanders and the prospects, and just watching that all develop this year, especially watching Matthew Schaefer and Cal Ritchie when he gets his chance. It's exciting. It's an exciting time to be an Islander fan.
No doubt about it. Thanks for the rundown. And Arthur, we talked about it a little bit before earlier in the show, but I mean, it's great, right? It's nice to hear the pundits, if you will, saying, "Oh yes, the system's been revitalized. They have a new prospect pool." But at the end of the day, not only do those prospects actually have to pan out, but also they have to be developed properly. And I guess that's what we have to look at here with the Islanders, because they've had hits and misses over the course of the past 2 decades. You can go back and name guys who were supposed to be something and didn't. I've been guilty of comparing Yzerman to Wahlstrom probably more times than I should have at this point. But you look at those, right? Like you look at the Dow Coles of the world and the Griffin Reinhardts, and they don't always get spun into Matt Barzals at the draft. There's not always a Peter Chiarelli to bail you out of that one. What is it going to be for the Islanders to kind of make sure that at least a good number of these guys pan out and actually become Islanders in the future, contributing Islanders in the future?
I think Lou and before him, Garth Snow, who always looked up to Lou and kind of modeled his managerial time as the way that Lou did in Jersey. Lou's big thing development-wise was he focused a lot on American college players. Danny Nelson, you see him kind of developing a certain way, and you think back to guys like Anders Lee and Brock Nelson. Brock only spent a year in college and then came up and had some time in the AHL before he kind of developed into the player he was, and it took him a little bit of time. And Anders really came kind of fully formed. He was a goal scorer in college, stayed an extra year when the Islanders really wanted him to come, and then came here, and he was scored a goal in his first NHL game and became the same player that he is now, 12 years ago. But when guys come in 22, 23 years old and they've been in the amateur ranks and then they come in and have a little bit of seasoning, I feel like across the board around the NHL, unless you've got a top 5 pick or a Canadian junior player who's really just lights out, that kind of seems to be working out better for the Islanders than the Canadian junior route, and then kind of getting them in the system. They had such a good stretch of defensemen with Bullock and Pelech and Devon Taves and Mayfield, and those guys played multiple years in the AHL to develop. So when you see a guy like Sean Aitchison, who clearly has incredible natural gifts as a skater, as a physical player, as an offensive player, you really want to say to yourself, like, man, I hope we don't see that guy for a couple of years, because that will be too soon. It just is the way it is. Defensemen, everybody you ever talk to who does scouting or development, 200 pro games before you know what you've got in a defenseman. And Matthew Schaefer, maybe that timeline's a little shorter because he's so incredibly gifted. Yeah. But you think about the guys that are still mainstays on that defense, and you wish Devon Taves was a mainstay on that defense. Things might have turned out a little differently the last few years. Yeah, maybe. We can get into that some other time.
Sure.
But those are guys, Garth, for all of his faults, knew and understood that development, especially for a defenseman, you got to have that time put in, and for forwards too. And maybe that time is not in the AHL, because we've seen some real, having covered a couple different teams the last few years, Rangers too, and every fan base, I feel like maybe outside of the Lightning's fan base, complains about how forwards are developed. Everybody feels like guys just don't pan out, and maybe it's just the nature of the position. But people were talking about William Dufour being the next Anders Lee, and the KHL just kicked him out basically. There's a lot more I think that goes into a forward's development, and I don't know that it happens because someone at the pro level is coaching them. It's just one of those things that happens.
Well, to that point, and to that 200 games that you're talking about for defensemen, but is Bridgeport a safe place for these players to be developed? You look at the lack of success in recent years. Now, I know they're trying to change that program around. They brought a new staff, but is that going to be a hurdle for these players, that aren't ready to go right from juniors to the NHL or what have you, and they have to make a stop in Bridgeport? Yeah. Is it a safe place?
It's tough to say. Brent Thompson, home runs with those four defensemen, really did a great job. The forwards, is it because he wasn't good at developing forwards, or the development team, or they picked, Michael Dalcol, who just didn't flash. They picked Josh Hosang, who was a reach. They picked some guys that just weren't going to, they picked Anthony Beauvillier, who probably would have been great there, but turns out he was just as good to go straight to the NHL.
Right. Yeah.
So, it's hard. I don't know if it's even you could call it chicken or the egg. It's just development is just not linear, especially for forwards. It's not about it's not how it is for defensemen. It's not time invested. It's just do they flash? Do they have the IQ? Do they have the ability to play without the puck? And you see the good stuff with Cole Yzerman, like you said, and you think, and if your mind immediately goes to Oliver Wahlstrom, that's a bad place to be,
right?
Because Oliver Wahlstrom just didn't have the hockey sense, and the injury certainly derailed him in a bigger.
And
way
I'm not saying I'm
people.
convinced that that's where he's at,
No.
but American-born sniper, the whole nine.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and you just hope that if Cole Yzerman turns pro after this year, he has another lights out year, and he says this is all the Islanders and him agree that he's done all he can do at the college level, and obviously coming out of college, you can still go to the AHL, so that's helpful. But you do wonder if a guy comes out too soon, is it going to be? I think people were kind of clamoring for Danny Nelson to come out after last season because he had such a good breakout year and on a pretty bad Notre Dame team too, and he said nope, I'm going back, and I'm sure part of that was the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello saying, go back.
Yeah.
We don't want you too soon. That's always the kiss of death. So
right.
I am interested to see how these guys that are still at the amateur level, when they're staying at the amateur level, how they develop and where they are when they get here. Are they ready for 40 Bridgeport games or 60 Bridgeport games or 100 Bridgeport games? Because for a forward, there's a sweet spot. And if you get past maybe like 110, then you're like, okay, we missed our window with this guy.
Right. Well, Jake, thanks for taking us on a journey through the Snake Den.
You're welcome.
Great stuff. Now I'm going to tell all you guys about Isles Fix. That's right, Islanders country. Get your daily fix of Isles news, highlights, and analysis by subscribing to Isles Fix, the Monday through Friday Islanders newsletter, sent directly to your inbox. Sign up for free or become a paid subscriber for added benefits at ilesfix.substack.com. And with that, we're going to go to Questions Brewing.
It's time for Questions Brewing. So go ahead, ask us a question.
That's right, folks. We want you to go ahead and ask us a question. But first, we're going to check in with our pal, Shades there, behind the glass. Ed, how we doing, buddy?
Yes, I'm in my Howard Stern phase right now.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have a sty that looks like I got hit with a
Thanks for letting everyone know.
because it's funny. This is what we get it for. But it looks like I got hit with a well-placed one-timer, and mainly I weep from my Yankees, so I don't want to cry on camera.
Okay. All right. Hey, look, it's a
second game
safe
lost in the
space, buddy. I
ALDS.
hope you're doing okay. I'm sorry they're getting bullied by the team up in Canada.
Yes, they are.
That's a shame.
We don't like that in New York.
Well,
Especially not in hockey either.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, we're going to move on to these poll results. We had a little poll of
How do we do there?
of which Islander people are most forward to looking, new Islander people are most excited for between Emil Heineman, Maxim Shabanov, and Jonathan Drouin. And it just changed a little bit. He was 50%, but it's still Maxim Shabanov with 48%.
Okay.
Emil Heineman behind at 40%.
Okay.
And we got Drouin at 12%.
Okay. Not so excited about Jonathan Drouin. Maybe that
No.
changes over the course of the year.
No, but we'll start off with our first question.
Yeah. What do you got?
We're starting off with DTMR on X tonight.
Hey, what's up,
DTMR,
buddy?
he says, great having Arthur on board. Is Riddick going to see significant games early this season?
Early, I would say probably not. I guess it depends on the schedule, which I haven't completely looked at. I don't know how many back-to-backs they have early to start things off, but I think you want to get Ilya Sorokin in a groove. We talked about kind of the sweet spot for him. Don't overuse him, but Riddick, I think, is there as kind of a safety net to start, and maybe throughout the first few weeks we'll get a little more clarity on what's happening with Semyon Varlamov. So I think it's going to be Sorokin's net for a little while early, but that could change, I guess, depending on how he plays and injuries and things like that. But from what I've seen, I don't know if you want David Riddick playing big games here early.
I think that was well covered by Arthur. Next.
Yeah, the Chronicles of Riddick. Islander Bob on X says, I haven't been able to get a sense of how good skater Shabanov is. How about you guys?
I think he's okay. You know, I don't know that that's like his strong suit, but you know, I think seeing him playing on the third line where he's not maybe, you know, he was kind of projected as a first liner and that's where they initially wanted him to start. Maybe skating is not going to be something that we see him shining in that area. But I'm curious to see, you know, I only saw him play the one time, and
Yeah.
I think he's been okay, and I'm sure that the team feels he's been okay, and I think it's going to be a work in progress. It's not he's not going to come out of the gate with big points and kind of doing anything flashy.
I had thought that I read that speed was one of the assets he was bringing over from the KHL. Now, perhaps I'm mistaken. But, that's when I kind of started to think to myself, well, if that's the case, I'd be curious to see him next to Barzal, obviously, if the skill holds up. But, sometimes, and you look at the line that Barzal's on now, right? Like Lee, Palmieri, both great veterans, but not exactly known for their foot speed, right? No. And you get the feeling that Barzal's going to have to hold up the blue line a few times, right? And so if Shabanov is a guy who has wheels, I wouldn't mind seeing him there if he's got the skills to back it up.
Yeah. I think we're going to see Shabanov bounce around a little bit and kind of feel out where he's going to work best.
For sure.
Mr. Thomas Boyle.
T. Boyle, how we doing, pal?
It's finally time. Thomas asks, do you see Engvall and Ritchie on LTIR or SOIR to the start the season? And what is the difference between LTIR and SOIR?
Educate us, Arthur.
I didn't bring my CBA cheat sheet with me tonight. I think SOIR is a designation. I think that's, I'm sure I'm going to get this wrong, and people online can correct me. That's more designation for some more inexperienced players who have less NHL time in, because there's some cap savings involved, or like a minimal cap hit.
Okay.
So I don't know that they're anywhere in cap danger right now that they need to put Engvall on LTIR. So he'll probably be on regular IR, and I would assume Ritchie will be until he's healthy, and then they can send him down. And Ritchie has so few NHL games that there's not really much of a cap hit for him starting on IR or SOIR if that's the case.
There you have it.
There we have
I'm
it.
Right.
Next up,
let her out. If not, it's not a big deal.
Next up from I hope this is supposed to be Blue Cheese, but if that's actually your last name, BLEUCHZ.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that's Blue Cheese.
That's my buddy Rob. Thanks for checking in, buddy.
What's up, Rob?
Okay. Blue Cheese says, besides the goaltending and backup goaltending, who would be your quote-unquote key player for this season?
I mean, we did already do our hero, but if I'm going to go to a secondary person, I'm going to say Ryan Pulock.
Okay.
We talked about health.
Okay.
Health is important, but watching them as a pair, they seem like they're going to get some serious minutes.
Yeah.
And I think Patrick Waugh wants to use them the way that Barry Trotz did when he put them together 7 years ago, which would be great.
Right.
But everyone's a lot older now.
7 years ago.
I'd be interested to see how those guys perform, and how Ryan Pulock, who even when he was healthy last year didn't really have a great year. And I think he's going to have to play some big minutes. You look on the right side, you've got Mayfield, who's, we understand what he is. He's a third pair guy now.
Yeah.
You've got Tony D, who is maybe not the most reliable guy. I think if they're a team that's going to win close games, you're going to have to see a lot of Pelech and Pulock, and especially from Pulock. So I think he's subtly a pretty important guy for this season.
Yeah, for sure. And I read some pieces from people a little smarter than I am when it comes to this stuff, but apparently he was like, you look at Pelech and Pulock, and Pelech's advanced numbers were still solid, right? Like he was a guy who was still helping to drive the play, or at least keep pucks out of his own net. Whereas Pulock, it looked like his numbers came back a little bit, and he was struggling a little bit. So we'll see how much they can balance each other out and how they perform throughout the year. But as far as an X factor for me, I'm actually going to go with the kid. I'm going to go with Matthew Schaefer, because I feel like
way out on a limb here, Sean.
Thanks, Arthur. Appreciate that. No, but let me break it down for you. No, the reason why is because I think if this team is going to be above that cutoff line in the playoff picture, I think he's going to have a lot to do with it.
I agree.
Because we're speculating here now whether or not he's going to be able to handle the 82-game season, how they manage that, right? And I feel like he's going to be a driving force behind that, because let's face it, if you look at the depth of this team, the defense is pretty much the biggest weak spot, right? It's not the team of yesteryear when you had Leddy, Taves, and prime Pelech and Pulock, right? We have a completely different squad there. So, and they've really been hurting for that puck moving defenseman as well. Like Riley did his best. They've had some. Even you mentioned D'Angelo before, sure. But they haven't had a guy like Nick Leddy or Devon Taves who's been able to skate the puck out of the defensive zone in a long time with success that those guys have had, right? So if this kid really gets comfortable this season and he acclimates himself and he goes through the growing pains of being an 18-year-old kid, a fresh 18-year-old kid here, then I think he's going to have a lot to do with that success. And I think he obviously has the chops, and he seems to be brimming with confidence, right? So if it seems like he can handle the mental side of the game on top of the physical, then I think he could be a huge factor for this team and be a big reason why they make the dance.
Fair enough.
Thank you, sir. Ed, what do you got?
Dale S. asks, what can Darchi do with Engvall and Duclair contracts?
Well, not much on Engvall, that's for sure.
No.
Listen, it is a crowded house up in the forward group, right? And if people do stay healthy, which they don't tend to do, he could be on the bus. And you save a million and change on that contract, right? I don't know if Patrick Waugh has him, slotted into a top spot on this team, meaning the, top 12, 13, 14 guys, right? So, maybe he's a guy who ends up getting, sent down to Bridgeport, and I don't think anybody's claiming him, right?
No.
So
what's he got now? 5 years left in this?
Yeah, and I don't think we're in buyout territory. Like I also think that contract is low enough where you just kind of deal with it, right?
I mean, when the cap is going to go up so significantly, I
right?
guess you don't have to worry about the million plus or so that you're going to be on the hook for if you do send him down. And contracts like that do actually get traded. I don't know how it happens. He's obviously going to have to prove that he's healthy and have some of the play at some of the level that he's shown in flashes in the last few years. But I think that's more a conversation for next offseason if we see anything from him this year. And as far as Duclair goes, if he stumbles again this year, 2 years left,
right?
With his track record, I think you're talking buyout or he's going to be here. So not a lot. But as far as Engvall goes, when we were talking about the forward group, I completely forgot about him, to be perfectly honest.
There you go. Yeah.
It was a long summer for me. So I think...
For good reason, though. It makes sense. It makes sense.
That's true. So I think maybe everyone else out there can just forget about him until he's healthy because
Swipe him off the list.
It's a good forward group. We don't need him right now.
Jonathan Doe asks, what happens first, roster player traded or Waugh fired?
Intrigue.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that possibility.
You have the floor.
Okay. I'm going to say roster player traded because, as I mentioned, it's a pretty crowded group. Maybe there's some interest in some of these guys. I do think Waugh lasts the whole year.
Okay.
I think they'd really have to fall off a cliff
I
for
agree.
him to be fired in the middle of the season.
I agree.
So I feel like if they're headed down that cliff, then we're going to see some expiring contracts get moved out, maybe some non-expired contracts get moved out.
Yeah.
So, I think we're going to go roster player traded before coach fired.
Yeah, I don't think I've said this on the show yet. Maybe I have, but I've said it to anybody else outside the show who would listen. But I just think this is an evaluation year for Waugh and the team and Darch overall. Like, Darch is going to just kind of take a seat, see what he has, and see how Patrick Waugh, and this squad fares, right? And I think if they have that potentially unexpected success of making the playoffs and, dare I say, winning a game or two in that first round series, maybe Patrick Waugh sees another day behind the bench. But I think if Darch doesn't like what he sees with Patrick Waugh and they don't make the playoffs, I think that gives him enough ammunition to say, okay, Patrick, we gave you a shot, but now I'm going to bring in somebody who I'm comfortable with. Because as we talked about prior to the show, new general managers tend to like to bring in their own guys. Now, we don't know who that is, but if the year goes south, which it could, then maybe that is the last we see of Patrick Waugh. We'll see. But I tend to agree. Unless they absolutely start the season, 10-2, I don't think...
Who's putting that out?
I don't think he's getting fired. Hey, man, it's just speculation here. What do you got, Ed?
Phlebotinum, keeping with Waugh, how much does Waugh on the hot seat affect the temptation to use Sorokin and or Schaefer too much?
We did talk about that, and I don't even think being on the hot seat is a temptation. I think he's just...
Yes.
Those are two of his most talented guys, so hopefully he can resist, and if they're headed in a bad direction, you really need to resist, and that to me is where Matthew Darche is really going to be. It's going to be his first test as a GM, whether he can, Patrick Waugh is Patrick Waugh. Matthew Darche is from that same corner of the world. Patrick Waugh is a legend up there.
Right.
Are you able to manage him and control some of his impulses that may not be the best for the team in the future, even if Patrick Waugh is not going to be a part of it?
For sure.
Ludiculous asks, do you think this season's roster will be more suited to Patrick Watt's aggressive, high-pressure system, or will we see more sluggish, uninspired play and missed assignments on D?
That is a loaded question.
It is.
I would say sure. I would say yes on paper. You know, I mean, apparently they have some more wheels. What do you got there?
However, Noah Dobson was perfectly suited to Patrick Watt's system.
Fair.
And it was not a good match.
Didn't exactly work out.
So I'm curious to see how Matthew Schaefer embraces that and whether him kind of having those youthful legs and kind of the ability to get up the ice kind of brings up the rest of the level of that group. Like you said, it's important for him to be able to fit into this system and succeed if the team is going to succeed this season. So, you know, there's a few old legs in that defense. I don't know that Patrick Watt will get everything that he wants with this defensive core as far as getting up the ice and having that fourth guy in the rush and quick transitions out of the zone. But if the forward group is solid enough, maybe they can compensate for it.
Ed, one more. Make it a good one.
I believe that was the last one.
Look at that.
So
Perfect.
yeah, everyone's just bantering at this point.
Okay.
Okay, we like the banter.
We're just bantering.
Yeah, absolutely. Chit chat in the chat. All right, well, that's going to do it for Questions Brewing, which also means that's going to do it for the show. So cue that outro, brother. There it is. So, ladies and gentlemen, want to thank you all for tuning in to episode 1 of the 25-26 season of Hockey Night in New York. And a big, warm welcome to Mr. Arthur Staple for joining us. Pleasure to have you here. Excited for the season. Gonna be a lot of fun. So folks, once again, thanks for tuning in, and a big thanks to our sponsors, starting with Knock Hockey. Again, can't believe these guys are sponsoring the show, but I love every second of it. The American-made, family fun, classic, less scrolling, and more scoring. Grab your board at knockhockey.com. Also, a big thanks to Razor, Kniff, and Lonstein, attorneys at law. Nobody likes going to court, but if you have to, call 212-LAW-1500 for a free consultation. And of course, a big thanks to Jay Belsky here at Floored Media. That's right, you pal. Yes, talking about you for putting the lights on here for us, doing a great job. Love doing the show here. Really appreciate it. So folks, if you had fun with us tonight, you like what we're doing here, if you're fresh to the show, thanks to Mr. Arthur Staple over here, please stick around, rate, review, and subscribe. We're going to have a lot of fun this season. Arthur Staple, now that you're back in the mix, where can we find you?
Still on Twitter at Stape NHL, although subject to change. We've got some interesting things coming for me in the next couple of weeks. Maybe we'll talk about them here.
Sure.
When they are all
a little
up and
teaser.
running. Yeah, a little teaser. It's going to be fun. Love being back around the Islanders. Had so much fun covering them for all those years, and I can't stay away. So there'll be more to come.
Dragged you back in.
That's
Dragged you back in. Jake the Snake Radonis, where can we find you, buddy?
You can find me on X at Jake Radonis, Radonis. Also, we have some trivia.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
so,
please.
Our trivia question before, which I don't believe you knew, was who was the Islanders' first draft pick ever?
Oh, okay.
It was multiple choice.
Okay. Like That's good. That helps me out. You know, I do. I'm not even going to pretend. Yes, okay. I don't remember.
We have Lauren Henning.
Okay.
We had Dennis Potvin.
Okay.
Bobby Nystrom and Billy Harris.
Oh God, this is dangerous. I'm going to go with Dennis Potvin, but I don't think I'm right.
Billy Harris. It was.
It was Billy. It was Billy Harris. Sorry. All right. Well, how did they do in the chat?
They did pretty good. It was pretty split between Potvin and Harris.
All right,
so
I don't feel so bad.
They were drafted
I had
the same
support
year.
there. Thank you, guys. I'm not the only person.
They could have looked it up, you know, but and they still got it wrong.
They have the tools for that. That's true. It's readily available. All right, folks. You can find me on the Twitter at Shawnee Hockey. You can follow the show on all social media platforms at Hockey Night NY, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, all the places. Check it out. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I've been Sean Cuthbert. We've been Hockey Night in New York. We will see you at Borelli's in Long Beach on Thursday.